There have been about 70 shootings at K-12 schools in Georgia between early 1970 and June 2022, but none were as deadly as today's attack at Appalachian High School in Winder, Georgia, which killed 4 and injured 9 others. That included 2 students and 2 teachers. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has also said that the perpetrator of that mass shooting, a 14-year-old, was taken into custody and will be tried as an adult. President Joe Biden is preparing to announce that he will formally block Nippon Steel's proposed $14.9 billion acquisition of U.S. Steel. The decision would be a stunning rejection of a deal proposed by Japan, a U.S. ally, that became a major political controversy ahead of the November election. The proposed acquisition has been under investigation by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. And the U.S. today announced a broad effort to push back on Russian influence campaigns in the 2024 election, trying to curb the Kremlin's use of state-run media and fake news sites to sway American voters. And on Thursday, that's tomorrow, Judge Tanya Chutkan, is set to preside over a hearing in federal district court in Washington, where she is likely to explain how she intends to approach the task of figuring out which parts of Trump's indictment will have to be tossed out under the immunity ruling and which can survive and go to trial. And as former President Donald Trump tries to win over Jewish voters in this 2024 election, he has also made a point of attacking Jewish Democrats, targeting the faith of 3 of the most prominent Jewish Americans in politics and criticizing any Jew who backs Democrats as an absolute fool who needs their head examined. Now, a number of Jewish advocates are quick to note that Jewish voters are voting on an array of issues beyond Israel, and they say Donald Trump's attacks on these Jewish lawmakers are blatantly anti-Semitic and lean into age-old tropes, that is, suggesting dual loyalty for American Jews between the U.S. and the Jewish state. And half of Gen Z voters say they'll vote for Vice President Kamala Harris in November, while 1/3 say they'll vote for Donald Trump. Now, this is a bigger gap for the Democratic nominee than some of the other polls this year, but not quite at 2020 levels for the party. And Donald Trump is suggesting that the Republicans shut down the government at the end of the month. And that is if Congress doesn't pass a GOP-backed proposal to establish new election rules nationwide. Trump has called on Republicans in Congress to link funding the government with the SAVE Act. That's an act which would require proof of citizenship to vote, in a bid to target non-citizen voting, which is already illegal in this country. House Republican leaders are considering adopting the strategy and picking a fight with Democrats. Historically, when they've done so and shut down the government, Republicans pay a huge price at the ballot box. And former Representative Liz Cheney, the one-time high-ranking Republican from Wyoming, who torpedoed her own political career by breaking with former President Trump, today she told students at a Duke University event that she would be voting for Vice President Kamala Harris in November. And good news for the Harris campaign, because economists at Goldman Sachs, that's one of the largest Wall Street investment banking firms in the country, they have projected that the economy under Donald Trump will falter. However, they say under Kamala Harris, the gross domestic product could face a significant growth, and that a Harris victory could be beneficial to all Americans. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you the stories that people are talking about. Well, if you were on social media, particularly if you were on X, formerly known as Twitter, on the weekend, you know that there was a whole lot of fighting going on with Black men with super high profiles. Tyrese was in a battle with some folks over a really ridiculous, ignorant, and inaccurate statement that somehow Kamala Harris and Joe Biden signed an anti-hate bill targeting or benefiting Asians while neglecting African Americans. That's false, patently false. And then there was the video that Ice Cube made where he's telling folks, don't give your vote away. He's saying, don't vote for any candidate without being guaranteed a policy that benefits the community as a whole. That statement reignited debates on social media about what is Ice Cube's agenda. Some accused him of being in cahoots with Republicans, being paid by Republicans. Others accused him of just confusing Black voters. What does it mean to have some kind of guarantee of a policy that benefits the community? Others have said he needs to go somewhere and rap, work on his basketball team, but basically sit down, shut up, and stop trying to tell people how to vote. Well, we thought that it's important to talk about voters, Black voters in particular, and all the misinformation, disinformation that's targeted at Black voters, not just from Russian operatives, not just from Trump and MAGA folks, but also some of this disinformation that is coming from folks in the Black community, some well-respected Black folks with millions and millions of followers on social media. Some have platforms that cause maybe some of their followers to think what they have to say about politics to be important enough that maybe they're going to follow. Well, in any event, we're going to talk about Ice Cube, his comments. What does it mean? What does it mean for voters? And does Trump really have a chance at getting above 7 or 8% of Black voters in this election, particularly with these kind of targeted attacks? When we come forward, Michael Blake, president and CEO of Atlas Strategy Group, former elected official in the state of New York, is joining us. And Mondale Robinson, founder of the Black Male Voter Project, is here to help us break it all down when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition. With powerful new contributions from today's leading voices, this 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later today.
We're thrilled to announce that the Dear Future Wifey podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Latiris R. Whitfield, explores the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA Can believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
There's no time like the present. Let's get back to more of Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
How they are being targeted by so many different groups, whether it's Russian bots, whether it's other foreign actors, and sometimes it's just folks in the Black community who have decided for whatever reason that they aren't benefiting in this economy. They're not benefiting from some of the policies that have been enacted by the present administration. So we're going to talk to some folks who have their fingers on the pulse of Black male voters. Michael Blake is here. He's the president of Next Level Sports and Entertainment. He's the founder and CEO of Atlas Strategy Group. He's a former state rep for the state of New York. He's been involved in these big calls involving Black male voters in particular, and he has his fingers on the pulse of Black voters. Hello, Michael, and welcome. I know you are super busy. This is a busy time for so many folks, particularly people that do what you do. So I'm glad you were able to take some time with us today. But you saw the video from Ice Cube, the comments that Black voters should not be giving their vote away, that they should make sure they're getting something. They're getting a guarantee for some policies. Some folks were just livid at Ice Cube, said this is a way to discourage Black voters from voting. Others said they were confused. They didn't know what he was talking about. And then there's some folks who were cheering him on, saying, you're right, you're right. Other groups ask for what they want. Black folks need to do the same. What did you make of that Ice Cube video? And help us understand, if you know, what it is Ice Cube is really trying to say, since he went on after this whole, dust up to say he's not in cahoots with Republicans.
Well, first, good to see you, Sister Martin. Always good to be with you, and always will make time for you. To Ice Cube and the Tyrese and everyone else out there, Black folk are not giving their votes away. It's a silly, it's a lazy, it's an ignorant comment that they're making. It's actually quite concerning, quite frankly, because you're insinuating that Black people are not smart, right? I mean, that's what it's, so to Ice, so you're essentially saying that Black folk are good with your 3-on-3 basketball, but they can't pick a president? Tyrese, you saying folks are good to watch your concerts and go to your shows, but they can't pick a president? So let's make sure we're clear on that. And to the degree of what we're talking about on a substantive standpoint, and I always say, as a person of faith, I don't believe in coincidence. When we have this conversation today, where the vice president laid out an incredible economic agenda, and very specifically, the highlighted point around going from $5,000 to $50,000 for small businesses to be tax deductible, that's a game changer for Black businesses. Yeah. So they would rather pick the man who said that he doesn't trust Black people with their money over the Black woman that's trying to help you make more money.
Yeah, it's really confusing, I think. And Mondale Robinson has joined us. He's the founder of the Black Male Voter Project. Mondale, I feel like we've been having this conversation for a while. This isn't a new conversation. Ice Cube, we remember during the 2020 election, there was some, confusion, upset, hurt feelings over his plan. He had this whole plan for Black America that was not adopted by the Biden-Harris administration. Is this just Ice Cube mad because he didn't get, put to the front of the line?
I don't listen. For me, here's my problem with centering Ice Cube and his very selfish and privileged life. Ice Cube has never put Black people before his personal gains. People forget that when Ice Cube left NWA, this is the same guy who's cut his Jerry curl off, which was so so instrumental in his West Coast appearance to go to the East Coast to start growing an afro and become a Muslim. This guy will change like a chameleon whenever it's not beneficial to Ice Cube. Ice Cube is not representative of black people. He's the same person that said F the police when he was in NWA, and now he's riding around with Tucker Carlson saying he understands what police officers go through. I am so tired of these people being elevated, Tyrese, Ice Cube, when they have no political background or understanding of what's beneficial to black people. This is what I really mean by this. There are organizations that do this work year in and year out, day in and day out. Black Male Voter Project, my organization, and many others that really do listen to black men so we understand what black men are going through. I am afraid to say that we are the voice of black men, even though we have more data on black men than any other organization in this country. I will say, though, it is not representative of black men to believe that Ice Cube's lived experience at this point and for the past 30, 40 years of his life is representative of what most black people are going through. We're talking about one of the richest black men in America. And he's shown himself to be extremely selfish and also lazy in how he show up when it comes to policy. He doesn't even look like his industry that made him famous. Black men have resented and showed the world that they don't care about Donald Trump at all. There's not been a positive rap song about Donald Trump since he came down the elevator. The last rap song about Donald Trump since he announced the first time he was running for president was F Donald Trump. And nothing positive. Before that, you heard a rap song where someone was always talking about staying at Trump Tower or something like that. Here's what I would tell you. The world keeps trying to tell people that black men or black people are dumb enough to believe that Donald Trump is actually an option. But what we see since Donald Trump has come on the political scene is black men become more progressive. In 2023, we watched black men in Ohio outperform every demographic, even black women, for women's right to choose. 88% of black men voted for women's right to choose, 80% of black women, and no other demographic was close. So ever since Donald Trump has been on the map, we watched black men become more progressive. In 2020, he got less black men support than he did in 2016. So what I do know is these selfish people like Lil Wayne, Lil Yachty, and the others that show up because they need to get a charge expunged on a federal level and supporting Donald Trump in that space, or Kanye West for whatever reason he needs to wear a White Lives Matter shirt. They don't represent what black men are living through. And I respect what Brother Blake said about black businesses, but that's not even where most black men are. Most black men are not living in a point where they own a business or can even start a business. They are the poorest amongst those in America. We represent the lowest social markers of anybody in this country. We are the most transient. We're the only demographic that can be born poor or rich and still would experience poverty in our lives. Not black women, just black men. We have the shortest lives, and we're over policed, over sentenced, and our boys are over expelled and suspended from school. These are all political issues. To believe that we support a conservative demographic that say that black men's lives don't matter and their policy says it to match it, and the only thing they have to offer us is Byron Donaldson, who is willing to say that, our lives are better during segregation than it is now, is not an option. The problem, though, is this is not a carte blanche reason for the Democratic Party to rest on their laurels or believe that they have black men in the bag, because black men are still a demographic that need to be persuaded to vote, because we are suffering the most, because we do have real economic issues that are drowning us or keeping us away from the poll. Consider this, Areva. If brothers can't afford to miss a day of work, and in black districts, it takes 8 hours to vote, and we're making minimum wage, how can we afford to stand in line for 8 hours? That is a real problem. In Southwest Georgia, I got canvassers right now, almost 100 brothers knocking on doors. And we hear from voters that they work for the only factory in town. And the white men that own that factory tell these brothers, if you go vote, I'm going to know you voted because my cousin works at the poll, and I'm going to fire you. That is voter suppression in real life in 2024 for black men, and nobody ain't talking about those issues, sis.
Wow. Well, okay. So, Michael, you're on these. I know, are part of the organizing structure, or you've been featured as a guest on the massive Zoom calls. First it was Win with Black Women, then it was Win with Black Men. Are the issues that Mondale just brought up so eloquently, are those issues being discussed on these massive Zoom calls with black men?
Well, 100%. And first, I should probably give my title to Mondale. He's the reverend out here. The way he was just going to school right there with everybody. It's good to see him all day, every day. And of course, given him being elected as a mayor, he understands it's on the ground. To your point, yes, because at the end of the day, these can't be theoretical conversations. We're talking to brothers on the block on what they're actually experiencing and how they're experiencing it. When we talk through, for example, around justice, and obviously you're one of the top civil rights attorneys in the country, so you can appreciate where I'm about to go. We're very clear of not saying convicted felon, because you will trigger a very negative reaction among one of the brothers. A lot of brothers who want to hear impacted individuals, maybe soon to be incarcerated. Who did we hear that from? We heard that from Forward.us. We heard that from Center for Policing Equity. We heard that from people on the ground and what's happening in that regard. When we talk through the points around early voting, to Mondale's point right there, being very practical of saying, how are we making it easier for brothers to understand how they can get involved? In Michigan, for example, they will have absentee voting September 6th. They're going to have 40 days of absentee voting. So that education exercise that's happening with so many groups on the ground about what's happening, that's how it gets amplified. Next week, for the debate on September 10th, Win with Black Men, ourselves at Kairos Democracy Project, Collective, so many others are going to partner up again for in-person and virtual debate watch events, pre and post, so that we can actually hear from brothers on the ground. Lastly, talking about states such as North Carolina, which obviously Mondale can talk about far more than I can, but a place I've spent a lot of time in. It's a place where you got someone in Mark Robinson, who is the epitome of skinfolk, not kinfolk, that is running right now. And so we are saying very clearly on the ground, this man does not care about you in any regard. So you're amplifying the voices of people that are on the ground. The reason why we started Kairos Democracy Project is exactly for how we started this call, because the storytelling and the communication around democracy is not happening correctly. That we are assuming that if we ignore the conversation around race and class and issues and what's going on with gender, it will have a negative. Final point on that. Forward just released information. Black men are graduating now than Black men that are going to prison. It's a data point that folks don't want to talk about. And the reason why we can amplify that is because we're listening and seeing the data and engaging with people on the block, on the ground. It's why we created Project Freedom with my son, the General, and Tamika Mallory and Angelo Pinto, et cetera, around that amplification. It's the reason why we're excited about amplifying what's going on with Congressman Stephen Horsford, who's now a national campaign co-chair. But it's also understanding the groups on the ground, like in Milwaukee, Black Leaders Organizing for Change. The brothers that are on the block doing the work are the ones we got to amplify. And to that point, it goes back to what's happening on the ground. The same work that you're doing around reparations and what's happening in Palm Springs and what's happening out in Illinois with our sister Robin Ruth Simmons, what's happening with Aria Florent and Liberation Ventures, what's happening in San Francisco with Cheryl Davis. These are conversations that are not theoretical ones. There's people on the block that have to be engaged that we got to amplify. And so to your question is an emphatic yes, and that we don't have time to wait because all of these issues are happening in real time. And brothers are looking for us, not just to do one call, which we had 54,000 on that line with Mondale and so many others, but it's been the continuity of it. It was the continuity of the call we did last week on March on Washington anniversary. It's what we're going to do on next week. It's the in-person activations we're going to have when it comes to what's going on with CBC, with Mayor Michael Hancock and the National Partisan Conversation on Voting Rights, and then continuing thereafter every single day in our communities and amplifying the voices on the ground. This is not some theoretical conversation. This is practical to the brothers.
I'm so glad, Michael, you gave that stat about more Black men graduating from school than incarcerated. Because I can remember sitting in church, some years ago, and we would hear that over and over again, that we had more Black men in prison than we had on college campuses. So the fact that that's been turned around, and as you said, not amplified nearly enough, not nearly enough people know that stat has been turned on its head is really important. So thank you for bringing that forward, because more people need to know that. That gives people hope. It gives people, a sense of excitement and just momentum in this election, that Black men are benefiting from the policies, which is why, Mondale, this concept, and I know you're right, we don't need to give a lot of air to Ice Cube and Tyrese and these other folks who decide every election period they're going to jump online. They say they're not paid. Who knows? Who cares? But they're going to have something to say. But we do know that there are people who are very vulnerable, because if they weren't, we wouldn't see all of this disinformation and misinformation being targeted to Black voters. So we know that there are, concerted efforts amongst bad actors to confuse Black voters. I had a woman send me a text. She's in Memphis, Tennessee. She said, Areva, I'm worried. So a lot of these black men in Memphis believe that Donald Trump is going to give them some kind of check, and that Kamala Harris is not going to be tough enough with world leaders. Then she went there when I just really wanted to drop the phone, not mad at her, but she's just a messenger. She said they're debating that she's not black. So as much as the men on Michael's call, the 50,000 people, the activations, those people get it. Like at the DNC, you're kind of preaching to the choir, but there are people out there, Mondale, and I'm sure your canvassers, the folks on the ground, they see these people who are hearing this misinformation and they are buying into it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. There's a few things that can be true and are true. First of all, I was on the call, the first Win with Black Men call, mainly because I wanted to remind people that while we should be rejoicing in the fact that 50,000 black men came together to stand behind a sister, we should also remember that call was a middle class call. That was the activating of the base. That was brothers, middle class and higher. These are brothers who have the wherewithal and also the political knowledge to be available to be in that space. That call will never.
They have computers. They have Wi-Fi.
But they also have the time to be there, and also they're economically, in a position to do that. What I want to say though is the majority of black men don't fit that demographic. So I think while the messaging and activating of the college educated, that call was a Greek heavy call, and that is extremely necessary to have those brothers activated, it is not representative of there are 9.6 million black men in this country that are registered to vote. Of that 9.6 million, 52% have not voted in the last 4 federal elections, of only one. It is illogical to believe that that the people on the call, us that represent the political class, are speaking to them, because if we were, then they wouldn't be a part of the 52% who set out elections. So we have to find trusted messengers, and it's not our job to tell trusted messengers how to conversate and also engage with this demographic. They already know how to do that. That's why they're trusted messengers. The problem though is we have to rethink or unlearn everything we think is a successful strategy in politics, because it does not.
Let me have you hold that thought, Mondale. That is such a deep and profound statement. That 9.6 million black men, 52% that didn't vote in the last 4 federal elections. That is jaw-dropping, shocking, and we've got to dig a lot deeper into that when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. 4 people are dead and at least 9 in the hospital after an active shooter event at a Georgia high school. It unfolded just as classes got underway today at Appalachia High School in Winder, about 50 miles northeast of Atlanta. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation adds the suspect is in custody, and several reports indicate he's 14 years old. Several more people could be injured, but they did not require hospitalization. Vice President Harris says it's outrageous parents have to worry about their children's safety while they're at school. The Democratic presidential nominee spoke on Wednesday's school shooting in Georgia while holding a campaign event in New Hampshire. She said, quote, "It does not have to be this way," end quote. Harris added gun violence is one of the major issues of this election. Atlanta is making big strides to battle homelessness. Black Mayor Andre Dickens announced that the city is going to invest $60 million, which will help with affordable housing and modular constructions. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Look out in downtown LA, 10 freeway westbound at Santa Fe. It's a little fire in the center divider area causing some slowing. And on the 10 westbound at Central, a disabled vehicle in the right lane has things really jammed up back from the East LA interchange. South LA 110 freeway southbound at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, crash on the right shoulder. That's got things quite slow from Stadium Way, and a crash in Glendale 134 eastbound right before Brand Boulevard.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC made a big jump in this week's Associated Press Top 25 college football rankings. After Sunday's impressive win over LSU in Vegas, the Trojans moved up from number 23 to number 13. The Trojans are one of 5 teams in the new Big Ten Conference that are ranked among the top 15. USC is back on the field Saturday night at home against Utah State. A heartwarming development today out of Buffalo, New York. Buffalo Bills free safety Damar Hamlin will be in the starting lineup Sunday against Arizona. The nation still remembers the cardiac arrest Hamlin suffered in Cincinnati during that Monday night game on January 2nd, 2023. Hamlin has made a remarkable recovery to become a starter again. Hamlin started 13 games in 2022. He appeared in only 5 games last season while medical personnel monitored his progress. Congrats to Hamlin and continued good health. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Here come the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelinos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV. With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
We are back, and 2 powerhouse Black male activists are joining me in this hour. Michael Blake, who happens to be the founder and CEO of Atlas Strategy Group, Inc. He's also a former elected official in the state of New York. And Mondale Robinson is here. He's the founder of the Black Male Voter Project. He's also a mayor of Enfield, the city of Enfield, North Carolina. Okay, Mondale, right before we went to break, you gave us a pretty startling stat about Black men. You said 9.6 million African-American men in this country, and you said 52% of them have not voted in the last 4 federal elections. So that's a pretty shocking number. That means that these men, if you go back 4 years, that means even Obama. Oh no, wait, does it go back to Obama?
Yeah, so the statistic is the last 4 federal election, and it's 9.6 million that are already registered. It's more Black men, of course, in the country, but that's that many that are registered. And yes, that same statistic was true, and that same statistic was true for Barack Obama in 2012. So, but here's that most people hear that and think it's a critique of black men. And in actuality, it's a critique of those who are practitioners of electoral work. Those who are paid, contracted to spend billions of dollars to turn out a demographic and never do. How can we continue to use the same consulting class that failed epically at reaching a demographic that we know, if they participate, would be the overwhelmingly base for the progressive or the Democratic Party in this country? That tells us that the same tactics that brought Bill Clinton in will not bring in the next presidential candidate. The demographics of the electorate has changed so much. When I hear people talking about historical data of voting habits or trends that work, it almost disgusts me because it tells me people aren't taking this electorate serious. We have 40 million new voters in since 2016. These are young voters, people that have never been considered likely voters or even considered in what we consider black voters and the habits of black voters. And what I mean by that is we determine the habits of black voters, specifically black men, based off of what it meant to be a baby boomer. Baby boomers were so small of black people. It was almost a 90% white generation. Now we have two generations in the millennials and Zers that are larger than baby boomers, and blackers, 42% something other than white in both of those generations. And yet we're still trying to target black men, specifically in this case, like we did Martin Luther King and Malcolm X generation. We're still talking about black leaders when black men of these generations don't consider anybody to be their leaders. This is why people fail epically when they think rappers like Kanye are going to persuade black men to vote. Misinformation and disinformation has a role to play in black men not voting, but not as much as how bad our tactics are at reaching these brothers. It is people on our side that cost us
Hold on,
elections.
Mondale. Let me have Michael jump in here. So, Michael, you hear what Mondale is saying. He's saying, look, we got an old, tired playbook that we keep bringing out every time there's a national election. It's not working. Talk to us about what does work from what you've seen, the work that you do, and particularly as it relates to these voters, these registered 9.6 million registered black voters who are not participating consistently in elections, even dating back to Obama 2012.
Well, first, Mondale's right. So let's start there around the premise that you're not going to have just one universal savior show up and get people to vote. And we can't continue to have the conversations of saying to someone, well, vote because the ancestors encourage you to vote. You know, you got a lot of brothers out here like that there's no connection on that at all. And so we got to be very practical around these conversations, right? And you're not going to have just one or two or three people that will motivate a conversation, right? There's got to be that continuity of the relationship. You know, I make a lot of relationship analogies when it comes to voting. You know, you can't just show up and try to holler at someone one time and think they're going to marry you. You know, it doesn't work that way. Right. And so for brothers who have not felt at all supported by the collective system, it allows for a conversation for a Trump to engage and entertain and distract for the purposes of what we're talking through. Right. Because when you have someone, we ignore the fact of this. And I will answer your question, but I think it's important to give context. Like when Trump is using his rhetoric, I'm telling people that's just not randomly happening. They have tested this. They are sensing this. They are seeing something that they believe would lead to brothers not voting. They're not thinking that they're actually going to get 20% to vote on their side. They don't really believe that. What they're hoping is maybe 2 or 3 more points of y'all don't show up. That's what they need, right? And in the best case scenario, what we had for President Obama, and I was with him for 7 years, best scenario, we got to 53 points. Like, people seem to think that this is going to be some 55, 56. It doesn't work that way. And so when we talk about what's working on the ground, fundamentally, you have to get funding to groups that are doing work on the ground, like Mondale, right? Like Joe Paul, like Collective, like what we're seeing with Win with Black Men, like folks that are actually connected to voters, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of theoretical conversations that are happening. You know, we have to get focused on a few different things. Number one, who is actually knocking on doors, making phone calls, and doing targeted text messaging campaigns. When you see the work of what's going on, like a Woke Vote, another with Duana Thompson Air Crew, that's another entity that is doing that work. Telly Medina with Democracy in Action, on the ground, mobilizing in places like Louisiana and other entities. Why is that relevant? Because people are thinking about just the presidency. New York, California, Louisiana, Alabama, that by itself probably determines who's going to be in the majority in the House. The next piece on this is how are we communicating through different outlets? The reason why we utilize a community platform for our text messaging is that we want to control the data. and I know Mondale can appreciate this, too often folks are not owning their data. They're hoping someone else is going to tell your story, as opposed to who actually engages and mobilizes in a very practical way on the ground. So you talk about like who's actually doing the work and being successful at it. I always say, you know, you wouldn't necessarily hire a coach or a general manager who keeps losing, right? Find the ones that have demonstrated that they're doing the work on the ground. Mondale said something earlier that I think is equally and essentially relevant, right? You think about other parts in the state like a Georgia, where to me, you look at a Georgia, you look at North Carolina, and you look at a Florida right now, you can't ignore that you're essentially talking about 1 point races in 3 states, right? The determination of winning those states is not just going to be what happens in an Atlanta or in a Charlotte or in a Miami. What's going to happen is what happens in those collar counties and mobilizing and having those on the ground conversations now, so that you're not trying to mobilize someone 4 weeks before an election. Because if you're doing that, you have lost the election and you've lost the conversations and you are losing the messaging battle that is relevant here.
So Michael and Mondale, both of you are singing from the same playbook, saying, look, there are people out there, organizations out there with proven track records of connecting with these voters. They know how to connect with these voters. They are the trusted messengers. But what I also hear, and I hear this often, Mondale, from these voter organizations, is that they cannot get the funding. So what is the disconnect between you two, who are experts, who obviously, you know, have done this for, you know, decades in your professional careers? You all have connections with people at the DNC, you know, at the top of our Democratic Party. Why are we still having conversations about who gets the funding when we know who should be getting the funding?
Yeah, listen, the America's tolerance, even its political system, tolerance for black men suffering is high. And I think that, and if we start there, then we understand why the same white consulting class continue to get paid to reach brothers that they never could never. We are the only, how in the hell is it that Black Male Voter Project is the first national organization to do the work that we do? I'm 45 years old. There should have been an organization when the 15th Amendment started, 54, 52 years ago, that was started, that was focused on black men and engaging us. That is not the case. We started Black Male Voter Project as a project in 2016, working for other organizations, a full-time organization in 2019. How is that the case? How are we the only organization that's only having conversation with the 60% of brothers who what the world calls sporadic or non-voters? How are we the only organization doing this work year round? We don't talk to super voters. If you vote every election or most every election, you probably never hear from Black Male Voter Project if you are a black man. We only talk to the brothers who don't see themselves in the political structure. We use not political tactics, we use tactics that are grounded in psychology. The MIT came up with something called the habit loop.
Hold that thought, Mondale. I've got to take a break. When we come forward, I want you to tell us, what are you saying to those voters? Like you said, you're not talking to people who vote every election. You're talking to these sporadic voters. And we do want to know what you're saying to them, because a lot of us know some of those voters. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 58. I think we're going to lose Michael Blake. I want to give you a big shout out. Thank you so much, Michael, for the work that you are doing. Got to have you back, my brother. Appreciate you so much. Go out there and keep saving this democracy. But when we come forward, more with Mondale Robinson and this very, very, very informative and interesting conversation. Stay with us.
On KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh, man. Looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys. Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet? Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is
grab the keys.
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Malibu, Colorado, Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer,
You've already taken the first step to managing your asthma. The next step is to write your triggers down in a notebook or journal and record your symptoms when you come across those triggers. This will give your healthcare provider valuable information about what you can do to help manage your triggers. By understanding your triggers and writing them down, you are on your way to taking back control of your lung health. Visit luma-edu.com for more guidance. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We are back, and Mondale Robinson, founder of the Black Male Voter Project and a mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, is joining us. Michael Blake was with us a little earlier. He is president and CEO of Atlas Strategy Group. Both of these men are activists. They are both working to save our democracy, and I don't mean that, that's not an exaggeration, I should say. They are doing the work on the ground, talking to voters, particularly, as Mondale just told us, those voters who are not likely to vote consistently in national elections. So, Mondale, everybody has a brother, uncle, a friend, or someone who's already told us they're not voting for Kamala Harris, they're not voting for their Democratic congressperson, their Democratic senator. Lots of reasons. We hear sometimes that folks think that Trump is better on the economy, that he gave us those stimulus checks, that he's tougher with world leaders. I mean, it's just a plethora of reasons. Mostly the statements they make are false. They've heard some Republican talking points and they don't reflect the reality. But what do you hear from those voters that are not voting consistently, or those voters in this election who say they're voting for someone other than Kamala Harris? And then what do you say to them?
So first of all, I think there's this huge misnomer that black men are becoming more conservative, or they're more likely to support a Trump-esque character because he's bombastic and loud and his bravado. But that's not true. Since Trump been on the scene, we've watched black men become more and more progressive. Again, I got to remind people, the few of black men that vote for Trump we don't even engage with that 8 to 12%, because it's always been 8 to 12% of black men that have voted Republican. What we do know is a vast majority of black men will not vote for Republicans. The problem, though, is it's not just what you say to black men, it's who you are and when you say it. And actually, have you been listening? So do you have the right to say it to them? And that's what we find out. We know that only 34% of black men somewhat or completely trust the Democratic Party. That's a serious trust deficit to be trying to tell somebody to go vote for your candidate. The bright side of that, though,
Mondale, why that trust, that huge trust deficit? What's that from? What is
that huge trust deficit exists not just with Democrats, because only 12% of black men trust or somewhat trust Republicans. So we know that there's a disconnect between black men and the political system in general. But you can't be black man in America and not have some skepticism of the political process, both parties. We have seen the worst outcomes of any demographic in this country. Black men have the shortest lives, not just of people in America, but of people in 105 countries. You have to go to places like South Sudan or Afghanistan to find people with shorter lives than black men in America. That is a political issue. Black men have the worst education outcome. That is a political issue. Black men are over policed. That is a political issue. So when you see all these issues, when you see black men being the only demographic in this country that can be born rich and still extreme poverty, those are political issues. Black men have the right to be skeptical of what politicians say to them, especially when those politicians have not been around when it's not an election year, especially when those black politicians are not knocking down barriers that keep black men from the poll, i.e., belly issues, those that make you hungry, housing issues, those that make you insecure in housing, and security as it pertains to the policing department. So when you have all of these issues, when you have this idea, it is almost ahistorical to think that black men should not be skeptical of a political system that kills us at every avenue, in every venture in this political space. So that the skepticism that we see in black men is a real thing, and it is grounded in the fact that there are not enough trusted messengers that have power to change what black men are living through. So that's just why I tell people, we see election cycle after election cycle, when you do studies of how you make people super voters, it's the money that's spent on the needs that are most important to voters. No organization, not the D-Trip, not the DS, not the Democratic Governors Association or the party itself, are spending issues on real black men issues. When I say real black men issues, it is not to say that the brothers who are business owners or college educated are not real black men. It is, though, to say that they are not the majority of black men in America, and the things that they're suffering through, i.e., they want more business loan or college forgiveness. It is not representative of what's plaguing most black men in this country.
So talk to us, Mindell. Okay, so the Harris Walls team, talked about today this economic, this opportunity economy, increasing the number of business owners, making loans more available, doing something with the tax code to make it easier for you to write off expenses associated with starting a business. You say that's all great, but that's not going to touch the lives, impact the lives of the black men you're talking about. We know under Joe Biden, we had the lowest unemployment rate ever for black men. We also know that Harris and Biden made that historic commitment to black colleges. So a lot of things, again, that touch the lives of middle-class people, whether you're black, white, red, or green. So the men you're talking about, though, what are the policies that would have the most impact on them?
So these are not just policy-driven folk, because you can show up. If you're not having a relationship, if you're not a trusted message, it doesn't matter what you're saying. This is what the Harris Waltz ticket is up against. The political system, the lack of trust in the political system and candidates talking to them for the first time during an election season does not build anything. It seems very transactional to a demographic who does not have the luxury of being transactional. This is why black men is sometimes taken as aggressive or standoffish. It's because we are living with our backs against the razor edge of the wall, and to approach us in an election year, 60-some days before an election, trying to have conversations about what you're going to do for us doesn't ring true. We are a demographic where the world don't do for us. So the idea that you're going to come into my life right now when you need my vote to talk about and how you're going to fix my problems, it seems like something that we've been sold a lot of time and not lived through. This is why it is important. Stop bragging about the $540 million that you've raised in the last month or so, and talk about how you're going to disperse that money, not with TV ad execs or consultants from media, but how are you going to spend that money on trusted message organizations? And while we have these organizations that have been around for a long time, but some of these organizations, like these legacy organizations, look just like the institutions that black men don't trust. People don't even know it, that 90% of black men that are millennials, some of them my age in the X group, millennials and also Zers, 90% don't go to church. This is not just a statistic that I pulled out of air. Me and the brother who's doing the research at Stanford already researched black men to see that you're still talking about black men in the context of the NAACP, the black church, and the 100 black men. Those are not the black men that are represented in the everyday life of those who are struggling the most. Talking about you're going to create more business loans or business access for black men, to these brothers sound like telling a homeless person to save money.
Okay, but again, tell me what it is that you told me that they need to be talking about trusted messengers, not just slick TV ads. I get that. So, but there must be some policies that will resonate with this group.
Yeah, but it will not come from the party. It will not come from the candidates or any of their auxiliaries. It has to be conversation with people that they trust. This is why I'm talking.
I know that's the conversation, but is there a policy like raising the minimum wage? Does that matter? Making it easier for men and women to join unions.
Again, if a candidate says that to a black man right now that's in this demographic, it's not gonna ring true. it's not going to be trusted. This is what I'm saying. It has to be more than what
Suppose you said it to him.
if
said it.
It would resonate more. It would resonate more. And I mean, but what we don't do, the reason Black Male Voter Project is a trusted messenger with this demographic, the reason we are in this group is because we address problems when there's no elections. We address problems year round, whether Black men need clothing, whether they come home from prison and need housing. We do all of that. If they need a couch, we'll buy a couch for them. We help brothers in ways that really remove the barriers that keep them from the pole. So if you don't have that long legacy of being a part of what's fixing Black men lives, it don't matter what you say or how right you try to sound, meaning if you say, hey, I'm gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, it doesn't seem true because you're not a trusted messenger. So beyond saying what policy, who's saying that policy is equally important.
No, and I get that. Look, I'm an autism advocate. I run a nonprofit. And if you talk to a special needs family in Los Angeles or in the state of California, and if I told them to do something or I asked them to do something, they're going to do it because my organization has been on the grounds providing assistance to families and kids with special needs for over 15 years. So I understand the concept of trusted messengers and how you build trust in community. So I've built that kind of trust in the special needs community. So I know that you move people because they trust you and they know you're going to be there, not just because you need something from them. So again, I guess, and we're not going to get the answer to this today because I got a minute left in this show, but it just bothers me that we know what the solution is to this problem. And every time there's an election, I feel like I'm having this conversation and we're not solving this problem. It's not some unsolvable problem. It's a very solvable problem. Do the work in the communities consistently. I think you made the statement that the tolerance level for Black male pain or suffering, as you called it, is high in this country. And you just got to keep that frame. And that's just kind of hard for me to believe because I'm way too positive to believe that we can't solve this problem and that we can't have trusted messengers in these communities, making sure that Black males are participating in our electoral politics. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. It is no way near perfect, but it's the best system that we have now. And we need their participation in it because laws and policies, even if they say they don't want to hear, policies are going to be made that will impact their lives. So if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And we don't want Black men to be on the menu. We want them to be at the table.
So let me. I know you gotta go, but let me provide a light for some people. People worried about Black men shit. Black men have been saving democracy for a long time. I think we get this notion about what the sisters do, and the sisters do a lot of heavy lifting. But if you look at the win number of Biden and in all of the Democratic states in all of the swing states that he won in 2020, Black men were outperforming at all of those win numbers. In Georgia, he won by 144,000 Black men that were eligible to vote for Barack Obama and did not vote for Joe Biden in that state. And the same is true in every state if you look at that Biden won. So I think while people talk about, the worry of where Black men are going to fall, Black men always vote with the community. We're the only demographic that vote with Black women or women they're the same race in this country. No other Black men or men in general show up like Black men do, period.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Mondale. Always a pleasure being in conversation with you. We're going to have a lot of conversations in the next 60 days. Keep doing that great work. We see you. We appreciate you. And we will have you back soon. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 15.